Hello and welcome to the Indie Author Podcast. Today, my guest is Sue Ellson. Hey, Sue, how are you doing?
Hi, Matty, really well. Thank you.
To give our listeners and viewers a little bit of background on you, Sue Ellson is the author of 5 nonfiction books on the topics of LinkedIn, careers, business, hyperlocal marketing, and Gigsters. She's also the founder of newcomersnetwork.com. And I met Sue when I did a presentation on podcasting for authors for Jennifer Lancaster's Authorpreneur Summit Down Under. And then we got chatting on LinkedIn about podcasts and other author stuff. And so I invited Sue on the podcast to talk about how big an online presence does an author need. And so whenever I talk with someone who has developed an area of expertise in the author world, I always like to ask, what did you see going on that made you adopt this as an area of focus and that you saw that people maybe needed help in navigating this topic?
Well, it's one of those things. My first website, newcomersnetwork.com, went online in 2001. And even that was an interesting experience because what I said I wanted and what the web designer produced were two completely different things. So I fairly quickly realized that if it was to be, it was up to me. And I would have to learn how to do these things. And I've just learned and got on from there. But what's been really interesting is I got sacked when I was pregnant at 28. And when my daughter was born, all of a sudden I was back in demand. And I thought, this is crazy. I'm a breastfeeding mother. I didn't want to work full time. And so I realized that if I was going to stay employable beyond the age of 40, because that seemed like so old at the time, that I would have to remain employable. So that's what I've done. So as I approached the age of 50, I decided, look, I can be an author at any age. It won't matter what I look like. I don't have to be in front of a classroom. I don't have to travel. I can just write and so on. And I thought, okay, let's do that. So in my 50th year, I launched 3 80,000 word books and I wrote them in 9 months, would you believe? It was a bit of a crazy time, but I then realized that there was always marketing you had to do with it. And also that just writing the books wasn't going to earn me money. But what it did do is it increased my income from all my other work. So I thought, all right, I figure I'm going to have to write at least 10 books before I make a living out of this. But what I discovered was like I spent all this money on careers fairs because my books were careers. I had more books stolen than I sold. All these, terrible things happen. And I just realized that, well, there's got to be a better way. And authors keep coming to me because they want to write. They don't want to build websites. They don't want to do the marketing. They don't want to do these other components. And so I've been called on a lot of the time just to help people get across the basics because I speak analog and digital, having been online for so long. And I often say you can teach a wise person to be digital, but you can't always teach a digital person to be wise. They're really keen to learn. They're fabulous to work with. They appreciate the effort that I put in, and I appreciate the effort they put in. And it just kind of fits, really.
And what were the other businesses? You said that, I think I understood you to say that the books were an adjunct to other parts of your professional life and that they were supporting it. They weren't the driving force. They were like a supporting or foundational force. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, absolutely. So the first book is 120 Ways to Achieve Your Purpose with LinkedIn, because what I realized out of all the things I could do, LinkedIn was where I could add the most value to people, both from a technical and a practical perspective. So whether it be their career or their business, plus also the tech behind it. So that was obviously the first one. That was like a huge cathartic process of getting all this stuff that I had in my head for so many years into some sort of condensed format. And then the next 2 books were about attracting the right career or business and marketing a business hyperlocally. So I had to divide the content and put some in the first book and some in the second book. And then the following one, the Gigsters one, was about the actual experience of not having a real job. So I haven't had a real job since 1994. So again, it was a way for me to process how I'd actually managed to survive for all these years as a gigster. And I wrote that before COVID. And of course, now loads of people are living the gigster lifestyle from gig to gig because they realize they can be mobile and they can work from home and they can do a bit of this. And there's a lot more people with all this advancement in technology. We're not necessarily going to be able to have access to a full-time job. So there's a lot of people saying, all right, well, how do I navigate that? Now, the gig economy is like your ride share and just just a task type of thing. But if you're a contractor and you have those sort of tasks plus bigger contracts and other bits and pieces, then you still need to be able to manage your life in an effective way. Yeah. So all of these books are adjuncts, and they helped me clarify my message. They helped me come up with content put on social media. There was lots of other things that they did just to help me attract business. And then, of course, when people found me on LinkedIn and they saw the books there, they would pick me rather than somebody who didn't have books, because they thought, well, she's obviously more credible because she's written books about it. So it was, yeah. And I think that's why I love the idea of being on your podcast, because an independent author is somebody who takes this leap of faith and gives it a crack and tries to do it themselves and incorporates it and all the other amazing things they do. That doesn't mean we don't get advice. I had lots of advice. I had author advisor, graphic designers. I had multiple editors. I still did that process as well. But yes, it was just really a great adjunct to my business also.
For your online presence, do you consider your website to be your sort of centralized home base? Or are you more reliant on LinkedIn? How do those things weigh for you in your own business?
Well, as much as I love LinkedIn, and I'm member number 77832, having joined on the 21st of December 2003. So I'm one of the first 80,000 people in the world on the platform, and been consulting on it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no kidding. I've been consulting on it since 2008. But and it's powerful. Of all the social media, I still believe it's the most powerful because it's about relationships, and relationships is what makes the world go round. So if you're going to pick a platform, you have to be on LinkedIn. For any type of author, I absolutely recommend it because it's highly optimized for your name. So if you Google Matty Dalrymple, it's going to come up. And so that's the huge benefit of it. However, at any time, LinkedIn could disappear. I know it's owned by Microsoft and it's unlikely, and there's probably a load of protections in place, but you could lose it. And then what do you have? You have nothing. The only thing we own is our own website. And of course, we have to pay for website hosting and have to pay for the design and development and all those sorts of things. But that's the one central piece of content that we own. I've been trying to get in search results, and lots of my poems that I now publish on my website are coming up. So if you Google angry tennis poem, I know you didn't wake up today and think I need to look for a poem about angry tennis, but there's lots of other ones like By the Seaside. I come up for that as well because there's a very famous poem about being by the seaside. So I wrote another one about being by the seaside, and that's on the first page of Google search results. So search results is one thing, but what we have to now think about is chat experience results. So we're going from SERPs to CHERPs. And chat results come from huge data sets. So search results come from databases, Google's database or Bing's database of content that they've scoured the internet and shoved in their database. But chat uses data sets, which is a much, much larger pool of content that they use to produce results. But of course, it doesn't include all the content that's on social media.
Can you just explain a little bit about, you're not talking about ChatGPT, right? You're talking about chat. Oh, you are. Okay.
Yeah. ChatGPT.
Okay.
Or any of the other services that use a chat feed. So for instance, LinkedIn is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft has purchased ChatGPT and is using the chat experience even within LinkedIn. And ChatGPT obviously uses ChatGPT, but also Bing.com uses ChatGPT as well. So this is why I love using Bing, because you get the chat experience in your search engine, which is fantastic. But because the information comes from data sets, and the data sets are based on content from all the websites, not just the best page on the internet, but all the content on the internet, good, bad, and ugly, we want to be found in those results. So the goal is basically publish all the time. The more content you can publish on your own website, the more chance you have of appearing in those chat experience results. And that's going to give an author the longevity as well.
If I understand correctly, there's a cutoff date for ChatGPT, we're in September 2023 now. I think at the moment it's like 2021 or something like that. So is there a way to accommodate the fact that if an author has become an author since 2021 or whatever that date is. I imagine that date will move as the various AI large language models get a better handle on the whole situation. But how do you accommodate that lag between the data and what's being presented to users?
Well, absolutely. So if people are paying for the Chat GPT experience, then they'll get the latest data set. So anybody who's using the paid version of Chat, they'll be fine. But the rest of us just need to start filling it up before everybody else does, and full of nonsense too, because obviously a lot of content produced by Chat GPT with these large language models is just superfluous and ridiculous and very banal and not our author's voice at all. So, and the other thing about having your website is you can build your email list and your database and those sorts of things. Whereas when you build your list in social media, you don't own it. Whereas if you can build it through your website and you get people on your mailing list, then you own those people as much as you can own them. And that's another really important step as well. So one of my clients, she's a natural integrative medicine practitioner and pharmacist. And every webinar we run every month, because I co-host it with her, we invite people to follow her on social media, but nobody does. But 160 odd people register for her monthly webinar, and she's got all these thousands of people on her mailing list. And so now when we promote the webinar, we also promote her books. And so at the same time you book in for the free webinar, you can purchase a book. And she was ecstatic because the first time we did that, she sold 10 books just out of the registrations for people coming to her free webinar. So these are the sorts of things we've got to keep thinking about, building our relationship with people. And the best way we can do that is, get them to the website, and only one website as well, like not a website for each book or for each idea you have, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
I'm interested in talking a little more about websites because in episode 200, it was Landmark episode 200 with Mark Lefebvre, and we talked about how things had changed since 2016, which is when the first episode of the podcast aired. And one of the areas we talked about was having a website as an author website. And we both agreed that it was important to have your own home base. But I think something I struggle with my own website, and I imagine other people are in this boat too, is that this is a situation where starting now rather than starting 10 years ago is probably a plus, because I'm on Weebly, which is okay. But if I were doing it again, I wouldn't go on Weebly, but I've built, you get trapped.
Yes.
It's like the technical handcuffs. Now I have it built there. I know how to use it. It's just easier to stay there. But it seems as if there are simpler options. I mean, people can have very complex websites, or they can have very simple websites that still serve the function of a home base. What are your thoughts about how to make it manageable, but also appealing to the people who visit?
Absolutely. Well, any website is better than no website. So let's start with that premise. So whether it's Weebly, Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, it doesn't really matter what platform it is. A website is better than no website. So please don't be nervous. Please don't be worried about spelling mistakes. Don't feel like you have to reference everything 600 times. Like, just get started. And we all make mistakes and we all change it over time. So that's no problem. I think one of the problems that occurs is some whippersnapper comes along and says, you need a new website. And yet your old website, whether it was ugly or not, was performing quite well. And then they change it to this brilliant, fabulous thing, but they forget to do all the redirects from all the old pages to the new pages, because sometimes the links change when you upgrade your website. So that's a worse problem. But the second thing that is really important is when someone lands on your website, they need to click something, because if they land on your website and say, don't get it, go back to search results, that gives you a high bounce rate. And if you have a high bounce rate, then you're not going to get in search results or chat results, because basically people couldn't find what they were looking for. So the goal is get them to land on your website and get them to do one thing, no matter what that is. And so think about that. So reducing your bounce rate is key, making sure that people visit more than 2 pages of your website. If you've got some sort of analytics installed, they should hopefully be spending up to 2 minutes on your website. That would be ideal, or longer if, got a lot of lovely long form content, and more than 2 pages of your website as well. So they're the metrics you should be aiming for. And if you're doing that, great. But I think one of the things that most people underestimate is the value of the title of a page. So this is still one of the number one factors. So let's say you've got an independent author who's a journalist, and they are trained to create these really clever, witty headlines. I am hopeless at that because I was never trained, right? That they'll come up with some really creative alliteration of two words that kind of go to, I don't know, they're just really good at it. And I just say angry tennis poem, I just say what it is, or by the seaside poem or whatever, because I'm thinking about what will somebody be actually looking for. So try and label all of your pages, up to 70 characters of the title of something useful. So somebody might have, if they're independently published, like I've chosen 120 Ways Publishing as my print name, as in the publishing name of my business. Now, if I just have an about page and put Sue Ellson's details on there, that's going to be useless in search results. What I need to have on the 120 Ways Publishing website is a Sue Ellson page, where Sue Ellson is in the URL, the link to the page, and in the title of the page, and throughout the page, and all that sort of thing. So that in theory, that specific page of my publishing website comes up in search results. So a lot of people underestimate that.
I think I'm understanding that, for example, on my websites, I have a page called About and Contact, but it should say Contact Matty Dalrymple, right? Or Contact the Indie Author as the name of the page, correct?
No. Okay. So good question. So Google does expect every single website, no matter what it is about, to have an about page and a contact page. So they're two things you absolutely must have. But is your actual website mattydalrymple.com?
Yes.
That's fine. So you've got your name in the URL already.
Of the overall site. Got it.
Of the overall site. But if you didn't, what's your print name, your publishing name, as in the company that publishes the book?
Well, my publishing imprint is William Kingsfield Publishers. I've never had a website for that because I just haven't.
No, but if you did have the one for William Kingsfield, then you would have a page on that which says about, and here's all the information about us. And then you would have another page which specifically principal author or principal publisher or whatever, that would be called Matty Dalrymple.
Oh, okay.
So that's where that comes in. Now, the other thing, apart from the title of the page in the structure of things, chat experiences are based on questions or prompts. So if you think about any of the questions people might ask about your book, how much is it? How many pages is it? How, all those frequently asked questions about a book. If you put them on your website as a question and answer format, you've already done the work for the chat robot, if you understand what I'm saying. So I'm encouraging a lot of people to put more sort of question and answer sections on their website content, thinking about what would somebody who was looking for this information ask. So if you're driving down the road and you need a petrol station or gas station, you say, where's the nearest gas station? And so you would want to have that on your gas station website. Where is the nearest? And so think about these questions that people ask either verbally to their device, hey Siri, where is such and such? Or if they just do a voice command, and if they type it in as a query in a search or in a chat as well.
So does that mean that on an about and contact page, it would be useful to say, who is Matty Dalrymple or who is the indie author or something like that?
Yeah.
Rather than just saying, meet Matty Dalrymple or meet the indie author?
Well, what's really interesting is if you type in Matty Dalrymple into a Google search result, you'll see what else people type. And like a funny one is, how old are you? Like age. There's these sorts of terrible questions that people want to know about us. So just Google yourself and see what people are. So what comes with my name is LinkedIn, because obviously a lot of people know that I do LinkedIn. So Sue Ellson LinkedIn is a query. So yes, you can just Google yourself, preferably on somebody else's computer, because you probably Googled yourself on your own computer enough. So you need to go to somebody else's computer in a different location and just see what comes up and the types of questions that people ask about you, and answer those questions on your website. Yeah, you'd be surprised.
Yeah. I wonder if you could also use that for fiction writers, for example. Like on my book pages, I have questions for book clubs. If a book club is reading one of my books, then here's a list of recommended questions. And I don't think anybody's ever going to Google or Chat GPT those questions. But is just the fact of presenting questions and answers like that useful for fiction writers?
Absolutely. And if you wanted to, you could say for a download of this, you could download the questions as well. But I still think you're better off putting it on your website and having it as general points of discussion. And you could say, there's at least 10 points you could discuss on here. Here's 5 that I'm going to give you, but there's at least another 5 you could add. So that way you satisfy their curiosity as well as the opportunity to, put those things out there and prompt them and make it easy for people.
Yeah.
I think it's a great idea.
I think it's interesting that it takes some time to, and I haven't made this transition completely yet, but you really have to bring a different mindset to an engine like ChatGPT than like Google search, because the interaction is very different. And I just feel as if over time, both the technology and the human use of it are going to settle into more cooperative mutual understanding. And until then, we're all kind of just thrashing around. But it will be interesting to see as that area of expertise develops. Will your advice be the same in a year? Because not only the technology has changed, but how people are using it has changed.
Yes. Well, look, when you've been around as long as I have with the technology, you understand people a little more, and obviously your own behavior changes as well. But I think the interesting thing is if you do any of these things to improve your chat experience results, by nature, you're also improving your search engine results. So there's that benefit. But there's also that old analogy with Henry Ford, who said, if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, not a car.
Yeah.
And so we're at this same sort of juncture again. So what most of us are using ChatGPT for in the first instance is to do things faster than what we already know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I go to so many events, like ever since I finished my degree, I go to between 1 or 4 events every week. I'm always learning. That's why I was at Jennifer Lancaster's thing, because I'm just like a sponge. And what I've discovered is when you keep this learning mind and this curiosity up there, then you're always acquiring new skills and you're always thinking how to do things. So anyway, one of these events I went to was about search engine optimization. And I asked them, how do we get results in chat? And nobody could answer it. All they could do was come up with quicker ways to do SEO, not to do chat. And so I thought, you're spot on, Matty. It's going to take time for people to adjust to that new way of thinking, and for the machine learning to understand how we're using it. And the other mega problem that ChatGPT has is that it's mostly English content. It's not Spanish or Chinese or Indian or, some other languages. So all that nuance of culture is not in there. And obviously the best writers dig really deep into location, well, particularly fiction writers, with the real embodiment of the history or culture or geography, or all those interesting things. And a lot of that is not documented on Western websites. So there's so much still to go.
Just a quick break from the interview. Are you getting value from the podcast? Please consider supporting it and all the work I do at the Indie Author by becoming a patron. To pledge a monthly contribution, go to patreon.com/the Indie Author, or to make an occasional contribution, perhaps to indicate the value that a specific episode or resource provided to you on your creative voyage, scroll to the bottom of any page at theindieauthor.com and click Buy Me a Coffee. And now, back to the interview. Yeah, I think that one of the challenges I face with my website is that I think it's fine. It's like a fine website. The content is fine, but the interaction is old-fashioned, just like buttons to click and things like that. Whereas with social media, you always have that. Now we have reels. Now we have, private rooms. Now you can have a chat with people on the messenger. And I think that a trick would be to find a way to make the actual interactions on the website, in addition to the data on the website, as appealing as social media can be. Are there platforms that you feel like do a better job of that than others?
Well, I'm always of the view that we shouldn't use the cheapest option, and we should always look at something that we can build upon at some point in the future. So that's why I've chosen WordPress as my website platform. It took me a long time to go from a static website to a content management system website like WordPress, because when you own all the website and you just upload it, you know that it's not going to be hacked as much. There was just this terrible intrepidation. And my website was hacked last year, and it took me 3 months to recover it because I had to reproduce all my content. Mind you, I would never have updated my website had it not been hacked. So I was kind of glad that it got hacked, because otherwise I would have just left it with this mishmash of whatever it was at the time. So I use WordPress, and the benefit of using WordPress is when one of these new whiz-bang features comes along, somebody will design a plugin which will work with WordPress, and you can put that feature on your website. So that's what it's about. But I don't know about you, but as a reader, I'm thinking, what was in this author's mind to come up with this stuff? I want to know who is the personality of the author. And I recently met a person who was a composer. And as soon as they walked into the room, I just wanted to know about this person. So I think from an author perspective, we want to understand who is Matty. And if your website can convey that, whether that's in text, whether it's in video, whether it's with flashing GIFs or whatever, that's going to depend on who you are as an author. And I would suggest that some of the best authors are very, very private people, and they don't want to be, doing dancing videos on TikTok, do they? It's just not their thing. And this composer composes for movies all around the world, and he's based in regional Australia, and he doesn't have any social media. But just walking into the room and I saw this man, I just thought I wanted to know about him. So I think, even though I love technology and I use social media and all of that, I don't think anything can underestimate the value of just being yourself. And in my Gigsters book, I call it your own kind of peculiar. So you just be, Matty, your own kind of peculiar, and don't let anyone else convince you that you have to do something that you don't want to do, because I don't think we should. I really don't, for anybody.
Yeah, I can see ways of playing to that in social media, but it's great food for thought to think about how I might transfer that to my website, because my website, I have to say, is much less reflective of me personally than my social media accounts, specifically Facebook. If somebody's on my Facebook page, then they kind of know I have 3 dogs and they know what kind of sense of humor I have and things like that. If you're on my website, you don't get that. So it's great advice to try to impart some personality to your website as well.
Absolutely. And I think the reason people end up doing it on social media is because social media makes it so easy. Yes. Whereas to find the plugin and add it in and then not get the engagement and nobody listens and you don't get the buzz, and, it takes a certain level of commitment to do it.
Yeah.
And so that's why everything I do is a sequence. So for instance, I have a newsletter that goes out once a month. I do it at the end of the month. I publish it on my website. Then I share it on my LinkedIn profile. It goes out through a newsletter feature on LinkedIn. Then I send it on my LinkedIn company page and it goes out through that network. And then I send it out via email. So that one piece of content is used 4 times. Every time I produce a portrait video, I put it on YouTube Shorts if it's less than 60 seconds. I put it on Instagram Reels. I put it on Facebook Reels. I put it on TikTok. It's exactly the same video. And of course, I have a blog page on my website as well, which is categorized. So again, it's optimized there. So every piece of content I produce, I just replicate it on social media. Now, if I don't get 1 million engagements of likes and reactions, I actually don't care, because I use the social media as a platform so that if your favorite platform is Facebook and you look on Facebook, you'll see something about me there, even if there's no significant engagement. But if your main go-to platform is Facebook and I've got nothing there, then you'll never find anything about me. So
Right.
I did create an account on Threads, which, as we know, is something a bit newer. It looks dead as a ghost town over there. But I still put the content on Threads, but I haven't got any feedback at all from that. And another one that people have forgotten about is Twitter. And if you put out 3 tweets a week, you will get Google search results with the 3 tiles of your 3 latest tweets. So if I Google Matty Dalrymple, your 3 recent tweets will show up in search results. Why wouldn't you? If you're going to post 3 times a week, you might as well shove it on Twitter as well, or X, for the sake of getting your search results. So if you know these sorts of things and you just set up rhythms, I always put everything on YouTube because Google owns YouTube. So if somebody's searching for a video on Google, then my YouTube video is much more likely to come up than my Facebook video is. And yet if I'm on Bing as a search engine, I do have to put reviews on Facebook because no reviews will show apart from Facebook reviews. You've got all these challenges with the tech. And of course, everybody changes the goalposts every other week. It's like, how do you keep up with this? So that's why I just work on the principle, website first, share on social media, website first. Yeah, that's just my mantra.
I had, over time gone to more platforms, less platforms, more platforms. And my recent footprint is that I've always been on Facebook. I enjoy Facebook. And I was on Twitter for a while, not because I understood Twitter, but just because a lot of my guests were there. So I was posting there. And then I kind of got disgusted and left. And so then I switched to Instagram, but I similarly didn't understand Instagram. And I finally understood why I didn't understand these, because I can't remember the terminology that was used, but I was listening to, I think it was the Hard Fork podcast from New York Times. And there was somebody on there talking about how there are platforms like Facebook where there's a post and then there are comments, and the comments are structurally subordinate to the post, as opposed to a platform, I think that they were saying like Twitter or Instagram, it's all equivalent. And I realized that the reason that I gravitated toward the ones I did and didn't gravitate toward the ones I didn't is I could never understand the structure of the ones that weren't hierarchical like Facebook was. Like I would post something on Twitter, I would get a notification that someone had put a comment and it would say like, this is great. And then I would spend 10 minutes trying to figure out what they thought was great because I couldn't figure out like how it all related to each other. But what you're saying about at least have a presence on social media platforms, even if you're not active on it, makes a lot of sense to me. But the other reason I haven't is that I find I get much better. This plays out very obviously for the podcast. If I post something about the podcast and I flag the guest on the post, then I get all the guests, followers seeing it and interacting with it. Whereas if it goes up without that link, I don't get as much interaction. And I've only explored very, very basic social media management tools. And I've never found a way to say, I want to put this piece of text. And if it goes on Facebook, I want to flag Sue with this tag. But if it goes on Twitter, I want to flag her with this tag. Is there such a tool that can help you get to many platforms like that?
Unfortunately, not that I've discovered, unless the person has exactly the same handle on all of their socials, which is often very rare, particularly artists. They'll have one handle on Twitter because it's a maximum of 15 characters, and then their Facebook one will be different, and so on and so forth. So I haven't found it. So I post this exact same spiel with, the @ mentions for whoever is I'm talking about on all of the platforms. But every time I go to Twitter, I have to search for their handle and then find it and put them in. And so it is time consuming. But I find Twitter terribly offensive. And one night in the middle of COVID, I was looking at Twitter before I went to sleep. I couldn't sleep because I was so distressed by what I'd read on Twitter. And I can't stay there, Matty. I can't engage with the newsfeed. It's just not my platform. But I will use it for research and to find people that I can't find elsewhere. And sometimes like all the journalists are on there, all the producers of television programs are on there. So you've kind of got to be across it and then I have a policy also of everyone I meet, I connect with on LinkedIn. Now, technically, I should try and find them on all the other channels and invite them to subscribe to my YouTube channel and do all those sorts of things. Well, I just don't have the time because there's only me. But I feel that LinkedIn is a platform where people will generally create an account and stay on it. Whereas they'll go in and out of Twitter or in and out of Facebook or in and out of Instagram. So, I'm not so anxious about them. Now, some of my clients, I even get them on Pinterest, because if they're a crafty type of thing and it's very image focused, then Pinterest can be the one, even better than Instagram for some of them.
Mhm.
And it's excellent for Google search results, Pinterest. And one client had a kitchen product. And the only way I could get him to be found in search results was to put his details on Pinterest, and then it took off. So, each of them has their own little nuances. I absolutely agree. If you like Facebook, stay on Facebook. You've built an audience there and you feel comfortable with that platform. And here in Australia, Facebook still has the most significant presence, even though a lot of it is probably in the older demographic. The interesting thing about LinkedIn is 59 to 60% are between the ages of 25 and 34. And that excites me no end, because you wouldn't have thought that cohort would be on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And so that's why, as I said, I just distribute exactly the same content. I have to add and find each person on each platform. That is a little bit time consuming. But please keep in mind also, Matty, I only recommend that you post once a week. So if you're only posting once a week, then it's kind of manageable. And if you put it on your website first, pictures of your dogs and what you did and blah, blah, blah. And now when I visit your website seems more interesting because, here's the pictures of the dogs. And the benefit is, here in Australia, the Australian government got very upset with Facebook for using content from major newspapers. And the government said Facebook should be paying for that because that's free content that they're pitching off the newspapers. And so what Facebook did in retaliation was they shut down all the newspapers' Facebook pages. And, you play dirty with us, we'll play dirty with you. You'll be getting all these free leads from us because we've been sharing your news. And one of those people who was shut down was a little IT business in a nearby suburb from me. And that wasn't fair. Like, they go, stop. So you imagine if you had only ever published your pictures of your dogs on Facebook and then Facebook deleted it, there goes the dogs. I mean, it's not a nice feeling. Whereas if you'd put it on your website, it's good. Now, the other thing I do also, Matty, is when I add it to my website, at the bottom of the blog post where I've added the new story, is I put links. This was shared on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever. So that when the Google search robot or the ChatGPT data set comes looking for information, it will come to my website and see what I wrote, and then it will see, she's also shared it on social media. So now I automatically have those outlinks to high domain authority websites on my blog post content. So it increases the value of my content. So if you look at sueellson.com/poems, you'll see any of my poems and you'll see where I've shared it at the bottom. So that helps me. Like, let's say, for instance, I mentioned somebody else called Matty Dalrymple, in some foreign country. And you was, so you got to fix it up. I never saw it, So then I can just go back to my original piece on my website, click the link, and then go back to my social media and edit it because I've got the link to the social media post. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm imagining two things I might investigate as a follow-on to this. One is that I have Canva Pro, and Canva Pro has a social media scheduling function that I haven't used because of this thing I described about I want to flag people on the different platforms. But I forget how many, it's maybe 3 or 4 or 5. I forget. Some number of accounts that you can link to your Canva account and then post them there. And I like that because I probably use that more heavily for the indie author because the information I'm putting out is people could come to another source to interact. If I'm on Pinterest and I'm not interacting there, then they're going to be coming to a podcast episode where there are options for them to interact. And then the other thing, this is for any Excel nerds in the audience, is I started doing this with a podcast where I've set up a spreadsheet that has all the component information about every episode. So if you get my email newsletter, it will say, podcast, upcoming events, and we have the events. And then we'll say, this week on the Indie Author Podcast, I talked with Sue Ellson about how big an online presence does an author need, and then the bio and all this stuff. The structure is the same time after time, and that's because it's all in a spreadsheet. And it will say, this week I talk with, and then the next cell will be author name, about, and then topic. And I can see that especially if I request this information from my guests in the form that they use to schedule the interviews, I can say, list all your social media handles.
Yes.
Because then
yes.
I'd have them all together. And then I could easily do, this is getting really nerdy, but I could do a filter that would create, here's the Twitter post, here's the
Yes.
Facebook post, here's the LinkedIn post. And then what I do is I
Correct.
just copy out those cells and I put it in Word and I convert it from a table. I'm embarrassed to even be saying this. I convert it from a table to text so
Yes.
that then I can just copy that and put it in. That's very interesting. I might experiment with that.
Yeah, you absolutely could. The other thing to bear in mind is you can schedule within each of the platforms now as well. So even LinkedIn, you can schedule Facebook Meta, you can schedule both Facebook and Instagram at the same time.
Yep.
So you can schedule within them. And if you just get into the habit of doing these things like your spreadsheet could just be used, tick, I've added Facebook, tick, I've added Instagram, tick, when you've actually scheduled them so that you would know that you've done it. But one of the things that I've heard people do with ChatGPT is they'll populate all their content by getting ChatGPT to come up with a whole list. And then they put that in a CSV file and they merge it. And then that produces all their social media posts for Canva. So there's all sorts of ways that you can automate processes now. And please don't ever go back and say, I should have done this previously. I've got this 3-word motto that I highly recommend you use, which is called from now on. So you forget about all the previous episodes and you say, right, from now on with the Indie Author Podcast, we will share the social media post on these platforms with these handles, and this is how we'll do it. But please, the first thing I say is put it on your website first.
Yep. That's great. Well, Sue, I could continue talking to you all evening, but now my brain is all packed with all the information we've already talked about. And so my brain doesn't explode. I think that that's a lovely point to wrap up our conversation. But thank you so much. This has been such an interesting conversation. And please let all the listeners and viewers know where they can go to find out more about you and everything you do online.
Well, of course, I'm going to say my website.
Yeah.
So it's SueEllson.com, SUEELLSON.com. But yes, if you Google me, if you put me into chat, all of those places will still find me online. So pick your favorite platforms and follow me there. I would love to get some more YouTube subscribers. I've been a reluctant YouTuber, but yeah, I'm slowly getting there. One of my videos has had over 73,000 views, mostly by young men in India. Not sure that's going to help me with book sales, but just one of the surprises that you get when you go out there into the world. You just never know what's going to happen.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you, Matty.